guys, and welcome back to my channel and a new video. So today's video is actually a video that I've been wanting to do for a while, but I have been wanting to reread this book because it's been a while since I've read them, so I can refresh my memory, and I haven't had the time or been in the mood for that. But I decided to finally do this video where I talk about some books that has mental illness representation, which I have quite a few books of, and a lot of them are really great ones, and it's portrayed really well, and I've been wanting to talk about them for a while. So before I go in every book, I'm gonna talk about the trigger warnings for that specific book, so definitely listen out for that and be prepared, and definitely don't watch this if you feel triggered by any of that I'm gonna mention when I pick up a book, because these are some really difficult issues to talk about. And obviously with books like this, it's gonna go quite in depth about mental illnesses and how this person or that person copes with it and how it handles it. It's gonna go in depth, and I definitely want you to just listen out for the trigger warnings whenever I pick up the book that I'm gonna talk about. But yeah, here are some books that I have with the mental illness representation. The first book I want to talk about is My Heart and Other Black Holes by Jasmine Wanga. This one I picked up a few years back for the first time, and I really enjoyed it. It really captivated me, and since then I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, and I've just been wanting to talk about it for a really long time in a video like this. So with this one, I really want to give a trigger warning for depression and suicidal thoughts, so just be aware of that before you listen further on. But in this book, we follow Aisol, who is a 16-year-old girl living her life, but she is struggling with thoughts of plotting her own death. She doesn't really have a good relationship with her mom, her classmates are talking behind her back, and her father is a criminal in this small little town where everyone kind of knows each other. So she feels really alone, and she doesn't really feel like she has a place in the world. So she's plotting her own death, really struggling with suicidal thoughts, but she's also struggling with actually going through with it. She doesn't really feel like, could I actually do it? So she goes on to this website where you meet people online, you talk to people who are thinking the same as you, who are experiencing the same difficult feelings as you are, and she finds this guy on there, and he's also struggling with thoughts like this. So they kind of decide to meet up to help each other to kill themselves, basically. And they end up meeting, and very unexpectedly, Aisol is starting to feel like he is filling that void that she's been feeling. She doesn't really feel alone anymore because they slowly become friends, and you know, they can talk to each other about these difficult feelings and the difficult thoughts, and she's starting to realize that I don't feel this void that I used to feel because of this guy, which is very ironic because they did meet up, and they did meet just because they both wanted the same thing, and that is to go away from this world. So when time comes and they are planning to do it, Aisol is really starting to question if she really wants to. And it's a really dark story, as you can hear. It's really dark and sad and heartbreaking, but also kind of inspirational and hopeful, because you know, you have these two people meeting for one reason specifically, and then it ends up becoming something else. They fill each other's voids. It's a really compelling story, I would say, but definitely be aware of the trigger warnings, and definitely be aware that it's a very dark book. But I thought it was a really good representation of depression and suicidal thoughts and just how one are struggling. So definitely recommend it if you're interested in the topic. And yeah, it was a really powerful book. Next book I want to talk about, I've actually talked about on this channel before. I don't know when or like what video, but definitely I know I've been talking about it before. Maybe with important books or books that I don't know, but I know I've talked about this book before. But that is 4 Weeks, 5 People by Jennifer Yu. So in this book we have a camp, kind of like a mental health camp, where kids come together that are all struggling with mental illness. And at this camp, you know, they have therapy sessions alone and together, just kind of a camp that adults would send their kids to hopefully make them better, you know. And I do actually think it's a pretty cool concept, because you know, you have all these kids / teens coming together from all over the country, and they come together at this camp, gonna live together, and they are all so different, obviously different personalities, different mental illnesses, but they all come together for one reason only, and that is to get better. And it's kind of a beautiful thing, and it's kind of an inspirational thing. I think being together with people that will understand you and is going through the same thing is good, but I also think it's bad in a way because you may compare yourself, and that's not obviously good. So I think it's a very difficult situation, but I think it was very interesting and a unique concept to read about. I want to give trigger warnings for a lot of mental illnesses here. We have depression, anorexia, obsessive compulsive disorder, borderline personality disorder, suicide thoughts, and narcissistic personality disorder. So obviously when we have this many teens coming together and they all are struggling with different illnesses, we're gonna have a lot of it here. So definitely be aware of that. It has a lot of different mental illnesses and it goes really in depth with those, just so you know. But yeah, I thought it was a really cool and interesting book. We have these teens coming together that are all struggling with some sort of mental illness and they just want to get better. You know, that's the goal, at least, that are gonna get better. And it's a really, really unique concept, interesting how they help each other and how they come together for this one common goal. So I definitely recommend it if you like the camp setting and the different types of people meeting up. Yeah, I do actually really recommend this if you're interested. So yeah, a really good book. The next book on this list is What I Lost by Alexandra Ballard. This was, I believe, the first ever book that I read about an eating disorder or anorexia, and I really enjoyed it. As you can see, I have a lot of tabs on this book just because I felt like it was just so captivating and it's so interesting to get to follow from this girl's perspective when she's really struggling. So in this book we follow 16-year-old Elizabeth, who feel like she's lost everything. She's lost her boyfriend, she's lost, it just feels like the world is ending, I guess, and she is struggling with anorexia, and she gets admitted into this treatment center, which is obviously her worst nightmare. She doesn't want to be there, and she's already plotting her way out so she can be able to restrict food even more. And obviously I want to give a huge trigger warning for eating disorders, anorexia, calories, numbers, weight, anything like that. If you are feeling like you're triggered by that, you probably shouldn't read this. But yeah, she's already plotting her way out so she can continue on restricting her food, which makes her feel safe. It makes her feel in control, and if she ever will lose that control, she would freak out. And I think that's what I liked about this book. It felt really accurate because an eating disorder is it's not about the food itself. It's about control. It's about wanting to be in control. And if you ever lose that control, it doesn't feel right. And you want that control because as a 16-year-old girl, I don't think you really have a lot of control. You don't have control over your life. You don't have control over your school. Like, anything's gonna happen and you don't have control over it. So having control over food is gonna make you feel good and safe. Like, I really understand that. It's obviously a really tricky and manipulative disorder, and it's really hard to get better. And you follow Elizabeth as she's obviously trying not to get better, but as she's also wanting to get better, the healthy part of her. And what also really struck me with this book is how Elizabeth's mother, and I think it's so common today that parents definitely reflect, like, you're gonna reflect on your parents and they may not even mean it. I'm thinking about my own parents. Sometimes they're not gonna even think what they're saying or really mean it, but parents can talk a lot about food and weight and calories when the children are around, and I think that's so toxic and unhealthy. And I know a lot of parents don't mean it and they don't understand, but Elizabeth's mother is definitely also struggling with an eating disorder, but you know, she won't obviously admit it, and she's an adult, so she doesn't really need to do anything about it. So Elizabeth is obviously really conflicted in that her mother is clearly also struggling and definitely is making Elizabeth even worse. Like, it's so heartbreaking how parents really can, I don't even know how to explain it in a good way, but parents really need to think about what they're saying in front of the children when they're eating dinner at the dinner table. Like, please don't talk about weight or calories or it breaks my heart, and I'm really passionate about it. Just please, just don't do it in front of children so they can hear you, because it will affect them, some more than others. Like, it's so important. Just really be aware of what you're saying and what you're bringing down to your kids, because even though some will not take it with them, some will, because it's just really important and toxic. And just please, just, it's a really important book. The next book I want to talk about is Challenger Deep by Neil Shusterman. This was a really interesting and unique concept. We follow Caden, who is this teenage guy, I believe. I think he's a teenager, and he has schizophrenia, which is a very interesting mental illness and that I feel really fascinated by and interested in. And I've actually met people with this illness through my internships when I was in school, and it's just really interesting is what I'm trying to say. So you get to follow Caden and his thoughts as he's kind of living in his own world, and he has trouble finding out, is this a real world or is it in my head? And it's really, really interesting. And from such a unique concept, like you literally follow from Caden's head, from his thoughts and how he sees the world, how he sees his surroundings, and it's just really, really interesting. If you're interested in this illness and this topic, like I really, really recommend this book. It's definitely going to be confusing to read if you're not aware what it's about, so you should really be aware that it's following from his head and his mind struggling with this illness, or else I think it's going to be a little bit confusing for you. Next book on this list is When We Collided by Emily Lord. I read this quite a few years ago for the first time, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really fell in love with this story and the book and the characters. It deals with sad, important things, but it also had a lot of humor in it, which I really, really enjoy. In this book, we follow Jonah and Vivi, who are both struggling with their own demons. Jonah is trying to keep his family together after recently losing their father in a sudden death. He has a lot of siblings to take care of, and he's just trying to keep the family together, and he's not really thinking of himself. And then we have Vivi, who has recently been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which is obviously, I think it's a relief to have gotten a diagnosis, because then you know, if you have been wondering like, why am I feeling this way? What's wrong with me? I think it's a relief to get a diagnosis, because then you know, and you can be treated for it, and you can have your medication, and you can go to therapy. Like, I think it's nice to have an answer to why you're feeling a certain way. But obviously she's struggling with that, and these people end up meeting, and because they're fighting their own demons, they kind of find common ground and begins this really, really cool friendship that later turns out to be more than a friendship. And I think it's a really, really powerful story about these two people coming together because of their demons, they're struggling. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And I think you got also to learn a lot about bipolar disorder, which is really interesting. It's also a mental illness that really fascinates me and that I'm really interested in. So I definitely recommend this book if you are looking for definitely like a contemporary romance that has a twist of mental illness and struggling and like fighting your own demons. Next book on this list is Definitions of Undefinable Things by Whitney Taylor. This one I read around the same time as I read When We Collided, and I really, really enjoyed this one too. For this one, I want to say a trigger warning for depression, suicidal thoughts, everything that has to do with that, so just be aware. In this book, we follow Reggie, who is struggling with depression, and you get to really follow her on all the stages of that. The therapy, the side effects, the medicine, how it impacts her everyday life. You really get to know a lot about how she is feeling when she's struggling with depression and what it does to her and her body, which is really interesting. And also it's going to be very individual, obviously, because everyone is different and everyone takes it differently. But it's really, really interesting to get to follow her and how she is really living with it. One day when she's about to pick up her medicine at the pharmacy, she runs into a man named Snake, and they kind of turn out to become really, really good friends, and friendship is turning into something else. But Reggie has been hurt so many times in her life that she doesn't really let people in anymore, and when these two people become friends and starting to become more, she's really struggling between being in her own little bubble where it's safe and secure, or jumping out there and actually letting him in. But she's really afraid to get hurt because she's been hurt so many times before in her life. So it's definitely really about depression and how she's handling that, but it's also about stepping out of your comfort zone, because it's really going to be hard. You know, she's living in her own little bubble for so long, and she's having a hard time letting someone in, and I don't think that's easy. I think that's really, really difficult, and it's really, really brave to do that. So I think it was a really, really important book, but also had a little bit of humor in it, and the characters felt honest and likable and relatable. I feel like it was a beautiful, honest and humoristic book, which I definitely recommend. The last book on this list that I want to talk about is Winter Girls by Laurie Halse Anderson. Laurie Halse Anderson is a author that's been writing quite a few YA books, I think. I don't think I read any other by her, but I know she has plenty of them out there that are really highly well spoken of. And before I talk about this one, I do really want to say trigger warning for anorexia, eating disorders, calorie numbers, weight, anything like that, body image, just really be aware. In this book, we follow Leah and Cassie, who were both really struggling with anorexia. But now Cassie is dead. So we follow Leah as she's struggling because she obviously wants to get better, because she knows that this disease, this illness killed her best friend. But the demon in her can't let go of the control that she's currently possessing over food, over her life. It's about control. It's about feeling like you're in control over your life, which is a deliberate feeling. Like it's really hard to let go of that comfort, of that control. It's really not going to be easy. And what's so damn scary about this illness too, is you're getting so manipulative. So people will think that you're getting better, that you're okay. As long as you say what they want you to say, you can really get away with a lot of things, which is really dangerous. A person with an eating disorder is gonna be manipulative, lie a lot, and you're gonna believe them because they're really good at it. People around her don't really have a clue what's going on. Her mother is busy, she's a doctor, she's busy saving lives. Her father is often away at business, and her stepmother doesn't have a single clue what's going on. So she's kind of alone in this, and she kind of feels like it's impossible to let go of the control. I think she feels kind of like it's I don't know, I think she also feels something for her best friend that I don't really know, but I think she's really struggling with a lot of things, and it's really hard to be better, to become better, to become healthy. But yeah, since her best friend passed away, Leah is really struggling, and all she ever wants is basically to disappear, and she thinks that she can do that if she just gets thinner and thinner. So definitely a lot of trigger warnings for this, but also I think it's a very important book that's gonna really makes you think about stuff and really gets you in the head of this girl. And it's really dark, really powerful, and I definitely recommend it if you're interested in the subject. But yeah, that was it for my books with mental illness representation. These are some really good books, and I think the representation is really good and accurate and important to read about. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have read any of these books, please let me know, or if you're wanting to, I would love to chat about them with you guys. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in one of my next video. Bye!